Hello, my name is John Sveck. I'm here with co-host Gary Waterman, and we're here with the first episode of the ALL24 SHOW. How you doing, Coach Waterman?
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to this. Just getting an opportunity, spitball and talk some football.
Awesome. So the concept here, we came up with this. So we just want to do sort of a regular segment where we come on, pick one topic, and kind of break it down. So we'd love to have any feedback from anyone watching on a topic you'd like us to cover. And we're really looking forward to bringing on some guest coaches that are going to help talk us through some of these things. So today we've selected a conversation on empty sets. So any thoughts initially on that, Coach Waterman?
Well, it's really interesting. It can definitely be something that challenging for offenses to sort of, figure out how they factor it into their offense and how much they use it. And certainly defenses, how much do you practice against it? How common is it? And so there's a lot of interesting things around there. And we'll get into some of those things, I'm sure, in our conversations. But it's definitely something I remember, back in 2009 when I was started as a young coach, as a head coach, I was also coordinating. And I always wanted to have some empty sets in there in the package and ways to get to empty, just to really try to put some stress on the defense. And it wasn't something we hung our hat on, but it was definitely something I thought could be beneficial at different times in the game and see their reactions and stuff.
Yeah, and I agree. And, defensively, it's almost sometimes more dangerous when it is that changeup, right? Because if you know you're going to see it and you know what you're going to see out of it, you can prepare. But you always know an offense has a week to practice before the game, and you have to be ready if they're going to put it in. So one of my thoughts is, how much are you going to lock your call versus how much are you checking to empty? And there's, the three main empty sets that we would see would be a 33, a 42, a 24. And some of those are very rare, but it just takes that one play call. You need to have your guys ready with how you're going to react to it. So an interesting topic, something I like talking about. So why don't we jump on the whiteboard and talk a little bit empty sets?
Sure.
All right, Coach. So here we are. We got the whiteboard queued up here, and we have it drawn with just a basic 33 empty set. So from an offensive perspective, what are some of your thoughts on a 33 empty?
Well, you mentioned just general empty talk. I think just thinking about it, there's different versions of empty, as you mentioned, 33, 42, 24, the dreaded 51, I guess, 15, if you even want to go that way. So each of them present, a couple of different choices that the defense has to respond to, or decisions they have to make. And, the thing about the 33 empty, I think, just empty in general, as I mentioned, again, I think sometimes offensive coordinators can think it's really complex and be afraid of it, but it really, it can be a simple thing that you do. At the end of the day, how many receivers do you have on either side? And, 3 receivers versus 2 receivers, and what 3 receiver concepts do you have, quick game and deep game, and what 2 receiver concepts do you have? And, so there's a lot of ways to do it simple without reinventing the wheel, but just within your system. 33, one thing about it is from an offensive perspective, you want to see how the defense is going to align to it. You've got your receivers spread out. You got to space them out, make sure you're using it. Are they going to come out of the box and guard down those number 3 receivers? And if so, what are they leaving in the box? And so those are some initial thoughts: as box count, receivers covered down. Just as I'm starting point, you want to think about how the defense is going to play that.
Yeah, agreed. And in our league, it's just because it's empty doesn't mean there's no run threat, right? Because you got that quarterback who can take it on that draw or just go, or they can add in. So when you start thinking about the box, if you want to cover everybody down, you start to get light in the box. So again, you have to start making some decisions. Do you want to stay with that 4-man front? Do you want to lock your call again, especially if you have some kind of pressure on? Do you want to come out of it, or do you want to lock it? All these things start to come in. If an offense comes out and their game plan is to really attack us with empty, and it's not something that's in their DNA and in their film prior, it becomes tough, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the fact that who is that quarterback and what's the perspective. That's probably going to be a starting point for what type of empty team you become and how you design your empty. Is that guy a running threat? And so, if that person's a running threat at that quarterback position, sometimes it's a wildcat, which can be present a challenge in itself, but then you might lose that throwing option. If you have a quarterback that can actually throw the ball and can be a running threat and you're using empty, it definitely puts some stress and pressure on the defense. I've known a lot of coaches on defense, they just pressure empty every single time. That's their strategy. And it is an effective strategy, they're gonna give you 1.2 seconds to make a decision and be accurate with that decision. And so, you have to have things built in to take advantage of that on the offensive side of the ball. If it's a pressure team on empty, what's their defensive philosophy? How do they approach it when you go empty? And, are they actually said, like we said, are they covering down people? Are they pressuring you out of that? Do they change their front up? Are they doing some line games to try to control the draw? I mean, how are you going to really take advantage of that? Or what do you have in your toolbox from an offensive perspective to deal with that? And how do you run out of it still? I mean, you can't just you don't want to just become a one-dimensional throwing team, as you mentioned. Sometimes we've seen jet sweeps being employed effectively. Do they track things or not track things? Bring a jet sweep guy across. What kind of numbers do you get there? So those are all types of things you consider, as you set up your offensive empty system. And so, you really want, again, you're trying to space out, use that, the great Canadian game, 65-yard wide field. How do I take advantage of that? How do I make them play it? And then, how do I have easy plays to get to my playmakers with responding to some of the things that conflict or conflicting their players in some type of way.
For sure. And that's all about 33 talk. And then all of a sudden you get this 42 look. And again, you have some more decisions to make defensively. I mean, it's convenient. We just have X's and O's drawn up here. But you got to start making some decisions. Who are those X's going to be? Who do you want to cover down? How are you reacting to this as far as an adjustment defensively? And again, if you're just going to cover down or lighten up the box even more, or what some of your thoughts are against that 42, right?
Yeah, and you also, I mean, the big, huge thing on the offensive side of the ball too is, if you're going to throw the ball at empty, how are you going to protect it? So are you going to be a slide team, half slide, big on big other side, 3-man slide team? Are you going to try to duel some guys and man up guys in that empty protection? Maybe you add in with a bomber on the backside. Do you have a front side versus a backside and a hot read on the front side and bomber the backside? So there are so many different things you sort of want to consider. Also, as you look at, you mentioned the 42, how do they adjust? What numbers do they leave? And, how tight are the guys, the inside cover down guys, how tight are they in the box, and how open are they going to become, especially in particular if you space it out? And is it 4-man to the field or versus 4-man to the boundary? And do they adjust it accordingly? So, you can really, again, it can be overwhelming at times from an offensive perspective, you try to do too much. But I think if you keep it within your system, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. As I said, you have 2 receiver concepts, 3 receiver concepts, 4 receiver concepts. You have run game concepts. How do you integrate that into your empty thought process? And how do you have buckets, like quick game buckets, screen buckets, run buckets, and then crossers and deep stuff? I mean, those are all things that you want to just make sure they're employed in your scheme to take advantage of adjustments and personnel.
And then kind of the last topic here, Coach, is, playing the Canadian game. You can get to that empty. Offenses have the ability to get to that empty really late, right? You take the back, he's in the backfield. It's a normal everyday 3-by-2 set. And all of a sudden the back's going to leak right before the snap or just after the snap to the field or boundary. So that's one of the reasons, defensively, it's ideal, in my opinion, if you can play all your calls out of empty, because that empty could show up at the drop of the hat right at the end of the pre-snap sequence, and all of a sudden there you are. So you don't have time to make a check. So how are you going to react to that, late 42 or late 33? And that's something that you need to practice. Even if a team's not an empty team, they can get to that empty concept really late. And defensively, now you have to know how you're going to adjust to that extra receiving threat, either to the field or the boundary.
That's so true. I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, one of the benefits of aligning an empty is you get to see how they adjust. And so that helps you. But you also, but bringing or free releasing your back out of the backfield can give you a huge advantage as well, just in terms of, how mismatches potentially and overloads, and if defenses aren't sound in how they come out of that, whatever they're calling, and being able to adjust and move and either bump and cover or chase and cover or lock down or peel. They're not sound in those types of rules. You can definitely get a little bit of a numbers advantage back. And that's the way coaches are using it, to get their numbers advantage back by, releasing a guy. And as you mentioned, some of the neat things are, you can release a guy and then add in a guy, bring another guy back, and all of a sudden now you've got you've got a couple of different ways that really stress the defense up.
Perfect. So Canadian game, coach, it's one of those things that we have to deal with that they don't really have to deal with down south, that 6 receiver empty set, and then the idea of getting to it late and really stressing a defense and forcing them to have a plan, whether they've seen it or not over the last few weeks of their game study. You better be ready for it defensively, because it's an easy install to get that concept in there. And like you said, to package it with your other concepts, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but all of a sudden there's an empty set. So defensively, you better be prepared, right?
Yeah, you're bang on. And again, with the Canadian game and the Canadian weather, if you may have to decide if living in empty through November is going to be a challenge potentially, but having that sprinkled in and having that as sort of a change up, I think can be a very effective tool. A momentum shifter, breaker. Also stressing the defense up, making them spend time in practice week on how to defend these things and align to these things takes away from some of the things they may want to do and forces them in some scenarios to become very vanilla against certain empty stuff, which puts things back in your favor, hopefully.
So, Coach, empty sets, that's it's a great topic, and obviously we could talk for a long time on that, but we want to keep things short with the ALL24 show and just introduce a topic. And we'd love to hear some conversation. If you're watching this and you have a comment, if you want to make that in the comments here or anywhere on social media, we're happy to hear it. And looking forward to the next episode. And if there's a topic or a question that you want us to talk about, again, we're going to be getting some great guest coaches on here soon that are going to help us talk through these concepts. What do you think, Coach?
Yeah, and coaches, don't be afraid to send us your favorite empty plays on offense. What do you use, or how do you adjust to it, and how do you play 33-42? Love to have a chance to go over those things, and who knows, maybe we'll have you on here talking about it.
Great talking football, even in this virtual online world here. So we want to keep it going and keep that conversation rolling, talking Canadian football at ALL24.